I've spent $485,000 on missteps. What I know now, I could be at probably $148,000 all in if I just.
Hello, hello. It's Jacob Hill with GRC Academy. Today I'm here with Mr. Miguel Villarreal. Miguel, how are you today?
I'm good, Jacob. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming on. And folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to like, comment, share, subscribe, review, all the things. Helps me out. Thanks in advance. Miguel, tell us about yourself. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, Jacob, a little bit of my background. I come from the financial services industry, right? And so where there's money, there's audits and there's controls and gates that are within those environments. And so I had the opportunity to work in the financial industry and participate in a couple of SEC audits for some of the large financial banks and organizations. I had an opportunity to work for a networking company that ended up going public and doing very, very well for itself. I'm where I'm at today because of a blessing of a company going public, and I was able to kind of take some of the revenue and build my company, Villatech. And second, just years of working hard under the tutelage of many mentors throughout my 30 years of being in the IT industry. Villatech is a small business that is out here getting ready to win DoD contracts. No, step one. And our goal is to provide managed services also to defense contractors who may not be able to provide a CMMC environment enclave right away, or they don't have all of the steps or knowledge and insight into it. And so Villatech is going to be one of those firms out there that's going to provide that services to our customers. We're waiting for you.
You recently got your CMMC Level 2 certification assessment completed. And from what I understand, you passed. Awesome. Wonderful job. And it was a journey. It was a journey getting there, right? So tell us about that.
All right. So that journey literally is rife with a lot of money being spent. So unfortunately, for a tech company like us, we are tremendously heavy in corporate America. And so like government calls us industry or, commercial space. And so we spent a lot of time in that arena. And for us, a proposal comes that lines up, makes sense, and we actually execute. So I think step one was a virtual CISO who had an understanding of the framework. When all that was done, we ended up getting engaged and involved in buying product and buying the systems and getting the licenses that we needed to get in place. And so that phase, when we first started, we looked at it and we're close to $180,000. So we were like, oh, this is not a joke. It's tremendously serious, this framework, totally different than SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3, or PCI compliancy. This was heavy. This was your entire organization and making sure that, at least from an 800-171 R2 revision 2 perspective, all these controls had to be met, evidences need to be placed, and policies as well. So that to us was presented as like a CMMC in a box, kind of don't worry about it. It's not official. Go at it. Go get this done. And when we started to peel back the onion and look at it in great detail, we saw we were missing a lot of things. Our SSP was sloppy. It wasn't calling out the different control families correctly. Mm-hmm. The evidence that we actually needed wasn't there. So phase one, all said and done, data center and getting a data center that was like SOC 3 compliant, hardware gear. We were close to $300,000 after we started to find out that we weren't really ready.
Oh, wow. Wow. And when did that process start? What year?
So that was in 2022 when we started to look at the framework and take it serious as we're going to adopt it within our company as a framework that we're going to practice. So we bought into CMMC 100% from top down, and everybody understood the objective was each control family we needed to reach and understand line by line. And so, it was painful financially for us as a small business, spending $300 something thousand, a lot of money with no DoD contracts.
You just alluded to it because Villatech, you had an established company. You were
Yeah.
focused commercial, right? And
Yes.
you actually also have a product out there.
Yes.
Tell us about,
Yeah.
Villatech and what the focus is, and then what made you want to get into the DoD
Yeah.
contracting area.
Villatech is a tech company, right? So we've been designing, architecting data centers, networks, cloud environments for the commercial industry and doing it with automation. And that's been super successful for us. But what we started to see was the banks that we're dealing with are asking for controls. Like, how do you know that, this is compliant to Sarbanes-Oxley, SOX compliance? If we dealt with a medical institute, they were asking PII data. How are you protecting that? So it was not good enough to build systems anymore and automate them.
Yeah.
There was a compliance component, a security component, a part of designing a network, but with security at mind day one. And so we felt that that was a good avenue for us to start getting into cybersecurity. And so we started to hire cybersecurity resources internally, and we started to dovetail. And then once we learned a little bit more about the CMMC, we were like, we got to go 100% after this. Plus, the Department of Defense was saying a lot of things about small businesses during those time. They were looking for small businesses.
Mhm.
And so we bought into that. Yeah.
So 2022, you started the journey. You
Yes.
spent $300,000, you said, over
Yeah.
like how many years would you say?
I would say within a 2-year span, we dropped. Yeah. So we're talking about a virtual CISO cost, hiring an internal cybersecurity governance person that understood risk and compliance.
Mm.
So that salary was a 6-figure plus salary.
Mm.
Getting FSO status, getting that person certified,
Mhm.
keeping up with, DOD's IAT levels have changed, of course, but
Mhm.
during that time, making sure that we could kind of get to expert level, and that costs money. Getting a data center, getting the gear, getting the equipment, and paying for those GCC licenses high,
Mhm.
which they're totally different than commercial, which slapped
Mhm.
us and told us Microsoft's making some money. So, if you ever want to do business, get into GCC high.
That's right. You were paying for the VCSO. You brought on a person to be your FSO. And I think you built around the FSO at that point, right? Around a team.
Yes. So the VCSO gave us the construct of SSP, here's CMMC, and this is what's happening. But, we were very early before it got approved from a FARS perspective on 32 and 48. We were told just do the bare minimum. But we kind of started to pick up and say, bare minimum for classified data, unclassified data, that didn't make sense. It just did some. And then as we started to search the internet and connect with people such as yourself and Summit 7 and some of the communication that was happening there, we started to see that you guys were preaching and informing us as community that, the government's being hacked because small businesses are not where they need to be. They got deals and contracts that they committed to from a DFARS perspective, and they're not adhering to that. So when we saw that, we took it internally as, you know what, my sister is an E9 for this great nation, and she's done a couple of tours, and she did something that I wasn't privileged to do, which was fight for this country physically. And I remember having a conversation with her saying, I want to do something for my country as well. And she challenged me and said, well, you got brains, you got IT. We need cybersecurity. We need things protected. Why don't you get into that? And that was kind of the impetus of me taking that mantle and saying, I could be a warrior for this country, but digitally. I don't have to shoot and kill anybody, but I could protect this country from a cybersecurity perspective. And so that was part of that journey. And as the FSO officer on staff started to see the SSP, they said, let's do it a couple of times. So we ended up doing it like 4 times, our SSP. Yes. And the goal was, every control, let's do it manually and let's understand it and let's understand how that's going to impact CUI from an access control perspective, identity, SIM/SOAR, logging, auditing, governance, risk, compliance, and it keeps on going.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of small businesses miss. I mean, and plus, not all of them have the technical expertise. And I think
Right.
you would agree because you came in with an auditing assessment background also.
Yeah.
Huge benefit,
Yeah.
you know, because you have people who are either non-technical and they don't know auditing either, or you have
Right.
people who are technical and just jump straight into the security controls, but they'll
Yeah.
miss so much if they do that, right?
100%. So we learned that there is a huge difference from commercial IT security knowledge and nomenclatures versus what federal government defense and industrial base security looks like. Then add ATO to that, and then add FedRAMP to that. They're talking about things that we were like, there's levels to this.
Yeah.
Like we understand there's levels to automation, there's levels to building networks, building data centers, the defense industrial base, and the things that they're working on and their compliances and the risk management frameworks that they're dealing with, they're levels that we had no clue. And we've been in IT for years and doing it for large banks.
Yeah.
But it's not the same. So what we learned was get around the community. We started to get around the community, GRC Academy, Summit 7 crew. We had access to one of the fathers of CMMC 1.0, Chris. Shout out to you. he's probably listening to this. He said, he said my name. Okay, I feel good. So he taught us a lot about CMMC, Doreen out there, and one of the professors from Purdue, I'm missing her name, but she was amazing on writing frameworks. And they taught us a lot about going into the minutia and the details, at least for level 1 at the time, CMMC level 1, which was like 16 or 17 controls that needed to be met. And out of that community, we started to get knowledge. We learned from you guys. This is bigger than just turning on Purview and having Sentinel send every data to you, and that's it. There was more than that. So the community helped us. It guided us. And that's my recommendation. Go to the community first, get around the community, learn from them first, and maybe you'll save yourself $300, $400 something $1,000, which that's basically the total to date. We're about $475K in.
Wow.
With no DoD deal at all.
Wow.
We got a 110 MET score, and so we're happy about that. And hopefully that'll turn into deals. But yeah, the small companies could avoid falling into the trap of spending money if they listen to the community and get around the right people.
Tell us more about the team that you built around the FSO and like what competencies were there and all that stuff.
So from the FSO, this person we brought in day one was a SANS compliance writer, technical writer. So they had skill sets in the SANS model of governance. And so that helped us get the SSP into like real flesh. We got around a community. I talked about Doreen, Chris, a couple of people in the minority business enterprise, which actually took the time to help us develop an SSP so we can actually see how one is laid out and built. Then we started to bring a red team person that can actually start to help get auditing, logging, because we knew that, from my background, from an SEC's perspective, when the financial industries need to report something that doesn't look right financially, they better have the logs for that. So I knew that having the ability to sift through logs, build KQL queries for us, that's Sentinel, or having some type of SOAR function where you could look back and identify quickly those different address families and let the auditors know what's happening if there was a compromise in that CUI data path. Then we ended up bringing in a group of blue team people that actually did the manual hands-on, go in there, turn the knobs, get into Microsoft, get into Purview, get into Defender, get into Intune, get into the data center, learn about FIPS encryption, harden the laptops from a stake perspective, do SCAP scans. I mean, it just kept on. And so next thing you know, I got a full team that's all they're working on. So.
Wow. And all while the commercial side continues to operate, right?
Right. Exactly. So it's like for us, we were robbing Peter to pay Paul in that sense, because there was no revenue in the DoD side. It was purely like, just keep going, and a prime will fall in love with you one day and you'll probably build a relationship with them. But they got hundreds of thousands of people asking the same questions that we were asking, which is partner with us. So we were late to the game anyways. So yeah, we were building our commercial business and then slicing off time from the team to be dedicated to building this DoD enclave environment.
So a CUI enclave was always going to be in the picture for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you, from an SEC standpoint, when we dealt with the financial industry, when they did audits, they wanted to understand the difference between back office and production network. So production network, which was dealing with people's money, order execution, market data, that was a separate network and it didn't tie to the back office. So you couldn't use the same routers and same switches and same firewalls. It had to be different if you were compliant, truly compliant, because you didn't want someone in the back office looking at a trade that came from a Bank of America and having access to download that and feed that to a competitor or something like that. Yeah. So in the SEC world, they were very clear about segmentation. And I knew that the government was about the same level. Segment the data, don't mix and match what you're doing in your commercial world. So day one, it was immediately, we were going to spend the money and build a total separate network. I mean, not just network, but everything had to be separate. Everything, even the assets. So all of our assets are, so there's a Gov laptop and there's a commercial laptop. There's a Gov circuit and commercial circuit. They're coming from two different separate providers. Nothing shared. Firewalls on one side is even a different brand, and then the firewalls on the Gov side are a totally different brand as well.
That's very interesting. And I think it makes a lot of sense, you know, that CUI enclave concept for you all. There's a lot of small businesses that are completely focused on defense contracting. And so I suppose for them, you know, I have my own thoughts about CUI enclaves and versus all in. And part of me doesn't like the thought of my corporate network being under the regulatory purview of the government.
I totally agree. I'm of the same mind. I think they should be separate.
Yeah.
From an auditing standpoint, the things that they were looking at when we went through the audit, it was brutal and it was crucial for them to do what they did. But there's no way there should be a mixing and matching. I think there needs to be a clear delineation of what is government and what is commercial, so there's no accidents.
It's also very interesting just thinking about the incident response reporting requirements coming out. I think in the FAR CUI rule, I don't remember the time frame, but it was very, very short.
I saw something like somebody saying 8 hours and then something else. So there's a little bit of a conflict. They wanted to see the tabletops of us going through that exercise of an incident response. Though we don't have a DoD contract, we had to show them how we would go through a tabletop for incident response. And we have it down to less than 6 hours on how we would report that and update the DoD on that.
After you had this team, you said you rebuilt the SSP. You said four times. Talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, as we started to grow and mature in the community, we started to listen to people like Summit 7 and your notes that you would put a lot on CUI on LinkedIn, and then some of the people like Chris, who was part of CMMC 1.0, they started to really pick at the matrix that we built. It wasn't to standard. When we thought we were to standard, we ended up getting a copy of a CUI enclave. And when we looked at theirs and we looked at ours, theirs was so in-depth. It had meat it was evidenced, pointing to the right pictures. We could see the difference of maturity and just ignorance. And so we did it again. But we used theirs as the soundboard. And because we've done it so many times, we were kind of able to kind of get through the controls a little faster. But that was a year journey to get that this one that we actually got audited. We took another year just developing that SSP, and it's extensive. Like when the auditors see it and they look at that, they know that time was put into it. They're like, this is good.
So you rebuilt the SSP, and then you went through a readiness assessment, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's someone says, how did you spend $400,000? So the readiness
and tell us when that was too.
Yeah, so the readiness assessment, I believe, was in 2022 or maybe 2023. It's 2023 if I remember correctly. I'm so excited that we're out of it, that things are starting to blur.
I'm sure.
We have a letter of acceptation from them. That was $80,000 to go through the NIST 800-171 R2. Just it's a 3PO. They're not, because you see 3PO is basically CMMC, blessed and all that. They were chosen as a C3PO, but the audit that we ended up doing, which was the early audit, was a NIST 800-171 R2, and that comes under a 3PO umbrella, and that was $80,000, and that was just to see if we're even in the game. If you're going to say that you're coming to the DoD and you're going to be supposedly ready, and people have 10 years over us, and they've been doing CPARs, rating, and getting performance reviews that are better than us, we better come to the table with excellence. So we did that as a step to just see if we were fully mature and ready to go.
And the results, were they good? I mean, probably you came away with some lessons learned, right? And some things, some go-dos, I'm sure.
So we ended up getting 110, no poems at all, nothing.
Wow.
But because they were like, you raised the bar, and basically the feedback was the big primes, Abuz or Raytheon, you're a small version of them. You're doing pretty much a level 3. We got like our drives are encrypted FIPS, and they're not part of the actual laptop. And they got to get checked in and checked out every day, both. And they got to sign in and sign out. And then they get put separately and locked up in separate components. I mean, we went all out. We went hardcore. So we ended up getting 110. And that was kind of like a confirmation that when CMMC does go officially live and the audits are, that we will be ready. And if there was anything that we had to fix, we understood we had 180 days.
Well, that's amazing. So that was 2023. And now we're in 2025 where you were just assessed. So what happened in between?
So in between, what you're doing is you're practicing what you preach, right? So we were audited. How are you doing tabletops? How are you doing reporting? How are you auditing? How are you making decisions to upgrade something that is CVE, but you may end up breaking the cryptographic module? There were all those tests that we had to deal with and assess and say, well, if we did this would fix the bug, but it would actually break our CUI compliance, because one of the main components is we were a test that particular firewall had a non-sunsetted cryptographic module. But if you upgrade that and you went to that version, it would break that cryptographic module and you wouldn't be in active state. So we had to learn. So we took that year just to play it out. We hypothetically, we got a DoD customer. They're yelling at us. Where's the CUI? Show me how it's moving through the environment, and show me that you guys are looking at the logs, and tell me how you would show evidence if something was nefariously moved from this to a USB. Show me. And we played it out. We literally played out. So we took that year to play the game of having a fake customer, a DoD customer, and we role played that, and it helped us for when the audit happened. We were ready.
Now, the CMMC assessment, the experience, what was it like leading up to it? when during the phase one, the readiness piece, and then into phase two where the assessment's happening. Tell us the story there.
I don't think your audience is ready for what I'm about to unleash in their lives. I don't think they're ready because if this is going to be your most watched one. Watch.
Hey folks, question for you. Do you know the status of your compliance controls right now? Like right now? We know that real-time visibility is critical for security, but when it comes to our GRC programs, we rely on point-in-time checks. But get this, more than 8,000 companies like Atlassian and Quora have continuous visibility into their controls with Vanta. Here's the gist. Vanta brings automation to evidence collection across 30 frameworks like SOC 2 and ISO 27001. They also centralize key workflows like policies, access reviews, and reporting, and help you get security questionnaires done 5 times faster with AI. Now that's a new way to GRC. Learn more about Vanta at vanta.com/GRC Academy. Now back to the episode.
Preparedness, basically, I was engaged as a CEO, right? So you have to, I think from the top, if you're a large organization and you have a team of 4 or 5 people, you could get away with doing an assessment without getting the CEO of the company engaged. We prepared ourselves. We were excited, but the CEO took his calendar and I just said nothing except CMMC, nothing except at my time, no meetings, nothing. I'm 100% dedicated, and I'll try to run the business if I had to do an emergency or block or tackle. But CMMC was my first love, my first focus, and that to me changed the entire atmosphere. Everybody saw that, oh wow, he's literally calling out controls. Like, how does he know where to go and logging in and giving the time frame and when they logged out and even getting the geolocation? How does he know that? Because that's how involved I was. I think it was a great experience. It was very stressful. We used KLC Consulting, a little shout out to them, They were very good. They have their lead auditor is no joke, John. You're a good guy, John. But he's no joke. You better have your stuff together because he's gonna ask you 7 times to show you evidence. So yeah, it was probably the first time next to what I seen in the SEC when they actually threatened a large bank that you would be closed if you didn't get this policy shored up. And they thought that the SEC auditor was joking. And they got a phone call from the CEO saying, whatever this guy's asking us to do, it'd be all hands on deck to get it done. So that experience showed me the power of an audit, a true audit. When you're going to be held accountable for something, you better make sure that you do. So I would say if you want to kind of play games and you're not really serious about cybersecurity and you're a DIB member already and you're thinking about, I don't think I need to do this, you're not a good fit for this next wave of what the industry needs, right? Because they're going to uncover everything, they're going to ask everything, and they're going to ask 6 or 7 times, and you better be able to prove it 6 and 7 times.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to me. Again, your past audit experience, coming down and really focusing with your team and setting that expectation of of excellence, not only technical, but in the documentation and all of those things.
Yes.
That's impressive.
I challenged the team and I said, guys, there better be no poems. There better be no 180 days. Everything will be met. Everything will be met. And that takes time. You can't rush this thing. And, CMMC in the box and the whole community out there, 30 days, I'm going to get you CMMC. Be warned. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's very dangerous. I cannot see what we went through at level 2, it taking 30 days ever. That's impossible. Yeah. That's impossible. Maybe if you built a brand new environment and you don't have any DoD customer, maybe that, and that's a push. That's a far stretch.
Were there any moments that stick out in your memory during the assessment and like, all right, are we gonna get past this one, or what's gonna happen?
There was a tabletop that we did in 2022, and that wasn't good enough. That was unacceptable for the auditors. So here we are, and they're like, and Miguel, this is not a poem. This is a deal breaker. This is a control not being met. And I was like I was upset and bothered that there's just so much to the CMMC level 2 that you got to have an entire team dedicated 100% full time to this thing. There's no shortcuts to this. And so that was a miss on our part. It was done in 2022. They looked at the notes and they said, that's not going to fly. We need something. Thank God that we decided to have a tabletop that night. It's like nobody's going home because we're going to go through this exercise and we're going to go through the whole thing and we're going to document it and we're going to eat our humble pie like we did last time for a whole year, and we're going to do it. And we went through the whole thing, and we had a 2025 updated tabletop for a particular control that needed to show evidence that we handled the matter correctly. And so that was the one fun, exciting, scary moment during the audit that I thought everything was going to crumble. So it sucked the life out of me when they said this is not met. And they weren't playing games, and it wasn't like they didn't even like, oh, you could get it done. It was just like, how are you going to solve that? And I said, tonight we'll solve it. I didn't know if they were going to accept that or not, but the next day they came in and they said, okay, where's the evidence and what happened? And we showed them, and that was sufficient. So that was good. Sometimes you may have to do the 180-day kind of thing and then come back and at least show them evidence. So that was a scary moment where I was like, oh man. And I was emotional.
Preparing for so long and your SSP being so solid, I'm sure that helped a lot, right?
It helps a lot, but it's half the battle. It's like having a solid SSP is not even it. That's like just enough to get the auditors to look at you and say, let's even engage.
Yeah, true.
Right? So it's like they're going to give you some of them call IRL list, or it's like a prep list of just kind of, where are you? Are we wasting our time? We don't want to take your money. And you should be, small businesses, be weary about people who are saying, oh, you're going to pass, don't worry, like that. And they're having those kind of conversations with you ahead of time. How do they know? This is, they haven't even seen your SSP. To me is just, it's almost like, is your house clean, right? Can I come to your home and see that there's nothing proprietary or CUI laying around the place? That's just stage one. Stage two, after SSP, is show evidence now. Show me that you're living up to what you're preaching here. Let me open up the dishes and let me look at your dishes and see if they're clean. You got to take the time to spend. I think, overall, it was a 4.5 year journey for us, the whole thing. And I wouldn't take it back. I mean, I literally, we could walk any company through a CMMC level 2 audit, and we could get them prepared because we put in the time to make this happen. It's beyond just saying, oh, I have a DoD contract. There's DoD people that have contracts and they don't have these controls in place.
That is a frustrating thing because in all reality, when the government hires a company, they contract a company, and DFAR 7012 is in place, 7019, 7020, requiring that SPURS score. They're paying them to implement that security to protect their information. And if they don't do that, Jacob Horn just put out a post today, excellent post.
Yeah.
They're defrauding the government.
Yeah, the billions of dollars. And you got people who are saying that the CMMC is not needed, it's fake, but they paid the government taxpayer dollars, you and I, your parents, and everybody else in this blessed country who's paying taxes. You guys, we all contributed to that. And we got a whole bunch of people that are not adhering to that. So
Yep.
in the grand scheme of things, too bad, too sad that this is tough. It was tough. It was tough the day that you signed that thing and you put up your SPRS score and said you were 110. It was tough that day when you said that. I knew that I was shaking when I even put that up there at the time when we did the NIST 800 171 and we were in basic level, which is self-attested, but we actually had the 3 POs named there. I was shaking. I was like, man, this ain't no joke. I don't want to get called out on this, right? So now that's an EMAS. It's real, right? Now, they're okay. Well, they were tested. They have the evidence. You got to do a hash of the entire SSP and files and all, so they can at least have that on their side to say, okay, well, you said you're here and you got audited. So I got to meet Stacy Bosjenik, and she was at the Billington Cybersecurity Conference in, I believe it was in 2022. And I remember go up there and saying, guys, CMMC is a thing. It's coming, and be prepared. And if you have a government contract and you don't have DFAR 7012, 7019, and DFAR 7020 implemented and in place, you are in trouble, because when you sign that contract, you literally attest that you're adhering to all of those controls, and we're going to hold you accountable to that. I knew that was an opportunity for Vilitech to kind of come in and kind of say, okay, we don't have a DoD deal yet, but we could at least align ourselves to this framework and make sure that we are doing everything we can to be ready. So when it's our time, no one can question and say, oh, they're going to leak data, or they're going to potentially compromise. It's going to be really hard to compromise our environment, because we've done exactly what they asked for, and we're going even further. So we're looking at Zero Trust, which has other controls that are outside of CMMC level 2. We're looking at CMMC level 3. We're looking at NIST 800 172 and those extra controls. And we're looking at the risk management framework 853 revision 5. So at least moderate. So we're kind of saying, yeah, this is a journey, man. And there's a lot of people who made a lot of money off of the government, and they're not even ready to protect a memo, FCI, right? Yeah. They're not even ready. So shame on them. And I don't feel sorry for them, right? I mean, you took the money, you took the contract, you've done well for yourself, clearly, and that's good. Take that money and invest it into building the cybersecurity environment like you should have day one. We don't want to only just be a defense industrial based customer in the sense that we are doing business directly with the United States government. And yes, that's first and foremost, but we also built an environment as a managed security service provider. And we have a shared responsibility matrix that has been viewed and audited and looked at. And what we want to do is provide insight into how you could potentially use our virtual environment or our physical environment, because we understand that some things can't live in the cloud. We design clouds. And so we understand hybrid is the way to go. So we have a CMMC level 2 MSSP equivalent environment on-prem and in the cloud that we can help the defense industrial base from a contractor standpoint get off the ground. So you don't want to go through the journey of building your own SSP. You could get access to our shared responsibility matrix of what we're responsible for, what you'll be responsible for. And through that, get your CMMC level 2 compliant enclave that we can spin off for you and actually do services. So you could get up and running and maintain your government contracts. And I know that's going to be a big battle out there in the community, because that's really going to be an impetus for companies that are saying, hey, I'm about to lose my contract. I can't get this environment up and running, because they learn it's an 18-month minimum journey.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about just for the building the environment. I'm talking about SSP. I'm talking about evidence. I'm talking about getting the team, tabletops, and all that together, minimum 18 months, and maybe even a little bit more if you're really thorough.
I'm really glad you're doing that, because we, small business especially, we need innovation. in the
Yes.
realm of CUI Enclave. So awesome job doing that and providing that. But you also mentioned that your customer responsibility matrix, shared responsibility matrix, that was part of the CMMC assessment, and they evaluated that right along with your SSP. Is that right?
So the shared responsibility matrix is something critical. See, the CMMC doesn't have a managed service providers like guidance yet,
Mm-hmm.
or ESP as they call them, external service providers. But one thing that they do mention, and it's kind of leaning towards where ESPs and MSSPs and MSPs should be focusing on, is their shared responsibility matrix. And it's the same thing that you had to show for the CSPs that you're using. If you have a CSP, if you're doing cloud, they needed to share a shared responsibility matrix with you that has data about what you're responsible for and what they're responsible for, because it's a shared service environment. So that's the one thing in the CMMC community that is important, that if you're going to say you're an ESP or an MSSP, you better have a shared responsibility matrix, and it better be audited to whichever CMMC level you're going after. And that's what we have done, right? So we made sure that it's at level 2. We have our shared responsibility matrix, and we're going through each and every one of those controls and making sure all segmentation and everything that we attested to is in place, and then we can share that privately with our customers. Microsoft has a shared responsibility matrix, but we had to go through certain requests and certain cryptographic keys and stuff to get that access to that area, to download that for the assessment. So it wasn't just lightly up there on the internet, just go do whatever you want to and download it. You had to go through a process to get that information from them to show that when you're being audited. Yeah, so it's something that you have to produce. I think what they're doing is they're just creating attestation letters that the shared responsibility matrix is something that we did review, and it is compliant. There's nothing special outside of the audit that they're doing, is just making sure that whatever was audited and highlighted as your responsibility versus the customer's responsibility is reviewed.
That'll be interesting to see how that evolves too. Because the MSPs of the world, I mean, and the MSSPs and all that, it's Wild West. You know what I mean? They've got to come up with a model to be able to provide some sort of assessment experience, for that. I know that some MSPs are going after CMMC level 2 certification, but something formal around that SRM, CRM needs to be there.
Jacob, it's not enough to do a shared responsibility matrix and get attestation against it. It's not enough. You have to do this, the level 2 audit. You got to. And it makes sense, because if you look at Microsoft, they have responsibility matrix, but they did FedRAMP moderate and FedRAMP high. And they've been attested for their cloud environment against our risk management framework 853 high and moderate. So that's a journey by itself. But then they also ended up getting joint surveillance audit, I think, at the time that they went through. So even the CSP understood that it's not enough for us to build a shared responsibility matrix and say, we're fine, this is what you're responsible for, this is how we're going to store the data, and you guys go, and CUI is not going to be a worry because we're talking about it on the matrices. That's not enough. You need to have something in EMAS where the DoD can actually look and say, you've been held accountable, and a shared responsibility matrix is not enough to say that you've been held accountable. It's just a document that says something. You got to have something that actually proves evidence that you built an environment that has microsegmentation, that data is not being leaked, that they're adhering to NIST 800-207A, which is the zero trust architecture. You got to have proof. And so I think we're pioneering as a managed service security provider, saying we're not just saying we have a customer shared responsibility matrix. What we're saying is we have a CMMC level 2 audited by a C3PO that has vetted our environment, and they will do it every year and check to make sure that we're in compliant. So you come to our site, come work with us, and we're more than just giving you a letter of attestation. We're showing you here's evidence that we hit all of these control families, and we have policies in place that we're practicing to protect CUI in the cloud and on-prem. I think that's going to be super critical, and they should make it a mandate, but it is the wild, wild west right now. Everybody's doing whatever they want to.
Been a long process, Miguel. Tell us what your lessons learned are. Hey folks, you may not know this, but I'm also leading a CMMC compliance program at a defense contractor. There's a lot involved with CMMC, and I understand how it can feel overwhelming. I was there myself many years ago, but since then, I've created CMMC training focused on defense contractors. The training covers everything from DFAR's contractual clauses to NIST 800-171A, and of course, CMMC. It's received over 100 5-star reviews and is certainly worth checking out. Find it at grcacademy.io. Now back to the episode.
So the lessons learned that I would advise is get a good reference, a frame of reference from a C3PO or CCA, somebody who's looked at the framework, understands the makeup of an SSP, and can kind of walk you through how those evidences could be at least met. That's what I would say is step one. We were an IT company doing work for large multi-billion-dollar banks and cloud providers out there. And we weren't even ready because the security controls that we understand, they're nothing near what the CMMC level 2 is. They're nothing near it. There's so many little nuances to that. So don't look for a regular IT company that says we can get you CMMC. No, they can't.
Yeah.
They're lying. That's a lie. We took 4.5 years. It was a journey. And that journey, we did it because we wanted to understand and learn it. So when others were going to come and ask for help, we knew what we were doing. And so I'm not saying anything against CMMC level 2 and higher consulting firms that are out there that can help you. What I'm talking about, a regular IT company, stay away from those. Get a C3PO firm, get into the community, get into LinkedIn where people are talking about CMMC on a regular basis. It's been their lives for the past 7-8 years, and you're late to the game and they're teaching you. Those usually in those forums and the conferences, the GRC Academy's podcast, you're going to meet guests and people who are going to come on this show that actually have done it, are part of it, and they're doing it. And so you want to get around them.
If you were going back and doing it again, would you have built a team or would you have brought in a solid RPO to do everything for you?
Money wasn't an option. I would have had a outside RPO team, a consulting company who's done this. I would have had them guide us and lead us and had the implementation. And I would have just had a team shadowing them on every step of the way, from policy to SSP to the hardware to data flow to designing visuals that show logical, physical, application-based flow. Just shadow them. And that probably would have saved us the number that we ended up spending. I'm happy that we went through what we went through eventually, because now we're done and now we have the expertise and the experience of what we have. But yeah, I would advise an RPO team or outside consulting company that done joint surveillance audits, that are doing CMMC level 2 audits today, and they have experience, having them do the work, because it's a lot.
Yes, I agree. And going back to your first point about getting a reference on one of those consulting type companies from a C3PAO.
Yes.
Honestly, the C3PAOs and the CCAs, they are the most well-educated in the ecosystem.
Hands down.
No question.
No question. Yeah. And they're beyond what the IT guys like us who've been doing it for 30 years. Because it's another world. It's not the same language. It's a different, we may have subsets and pieces of it, but we don't have the full picture. The C3PO, the RPs, the CCAs, the people who have been dealing with this, the GRC community, they're the ones that have the best understanding of how to implement so that you could short circuit and not pay 400 and something $1,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to be like us where there was pain, or do you want to be in a gravy train where you're kind of learning and they're helping you avoid all the pitfalls, and then they're giving you something that you can actually present to get audited and pass, and you didn't have to spend all that money. So our lesson is a lesson of hard knocks, which is a prideful IT company who did big things in the industry, help companies go public, doing automation, Google background, Stanford connections, and things like that. And you think you know it all, right? And then there's this lesson that we had to go through, or align yourselves to the community, get the right people around you from the C3PO community, go to KCO, go to the Cyber AB, they download, get the names, send the email to support@CyberAB and ask some questions. I asked the question about MSSP status to them, and Wayne sent me an email right away and said, I don't understand your question. What do you want to know? And I had to get a little bit deeper with him, and he responded, and it was clear. So they're out there and they're ready to help.
Well, Miguel, if you know all the things that you know now, if you knew all that back then,
okay,
how much time would it have taken you, and how much money would you have saved, do you think?
Very good question. There you go. That made up the show, just that right there. I think the lessons learned is you don't have to go the journey on your own. There is a community out there. There's a thriving community out there. There's charlatans out there as well. So you gotta assess, weigh it, what floats and what doesn't. But through the community, and if you listen to what they're sharing and how they're sharing it, they're all talking, they're all friends, they're all networked, they're all connected to each other. You're going to find powerful people who've done ATOs, who've done risk management framework assessments, who have government compliant backgrounds and were AO authorized officials in the government, and they're in this space today, and they're willing to help you through that journey. And CMMC is a framework for them that they've adopted, they've learned. And if I could do it over again, it would bring them in earlier. And from a financial standpoint, I probably would be $150K, $160K max versus the 400 and something $1,000 that we ended up spending. Yes, the licenses are expensive. You're not going to take away from the assets and getting cryptographic modules. Those things are expensive. It's expensive getting someone on the red team to look at logs and make assessments and look at them and provide evidence to you so you can have a report if there's something was compromised. On the endpoints, I think all in all, having their guidance to kind of walk us through the exact steps that we needed, that was missing. So there was a lot of IT we think we know and we didn't know, and that cost a lot of money.
Miguel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing with us. I really appreciate it. Awesome job, and a great job hanging in there and doing things the right way. I know success is going to come for you. And yes, folks, I would say Miguel, his team has a great skill set. We'll even put his capabilities down in the description. Want to get him some business, want to get him some defense contracts, and also defense contractors, reach out to him if you need that CUI enclave as well. Yeah. We need competition in that space. Awesome job. Where can people find you?
They can find us at villa-tech.com. And you can send us an emails as inquiries@villa-tech.com. And I wish I had more information about Snapchat and all that other stuff out there, but I am on LinkedIn as well. And you can find me under Miguel Villarreal and just look for this face and you'll see me there. And I'd love to network and connect with you.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, GRC.
Hey, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe and then check out this video.